Kia ora and welcome everyone to the first Geo Talk, Geo Education and Outreach talk we've had for a while here at the Geo Education, Outreach and International Development Special Interest Group of the Geoscience Society of New Zealand. Apologies for that very long name. Welcome to members, and also I'm aware that we will have some non-members with us today who are super keen to come, and the link has been shared with them. I would request that everyone please turn off your mics, except for you, Martin, of course, for the talk today. Martin will be giving his presentation, and then at the end of his talk, I'll invite you to use the raise the hand feature, and we can have some live Q&A. And at that point, please turn on your videos and mics so we can have a bit of a discussion. Just for your awareness, the session today is being recorded, and I'll be making that available on the GSNZ YouTube channel for anyone who can't make it in person today. But without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to Associate Professor Martin Brook from the University of Auckland. Martin's also a Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy in the UK. He's a Chartered Geologist and a Chartered Member of Engineering New Zealand. And today he's going to be talking to us about the Geoscientist graduate pipeline issues, state of play and growth opportunities. So over to you, Martin.
Thank you, and kia ora everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here today. So I'm looking forward to running a few things by you, and we'll see if there's a bit of a choreo at the end. I'll just talk about the state of play and making connections and influencing, and a bit about work integrated learning opportunities and chartership in the geosciences. And there's a golden thread that runs through all of this, and this is about getting people interested in geoscience and making people aware of how fundamentally important it is for our way of life. Just quickly about my journey, I don't want to focus on this. I did a BSc Geography at Salford University. I actually did first year geology at Leicester, found out they didn't play rugby league, so then I had to move up to Salford, where they did have a rugby league team. So I finished with the Geography BSc, then I did quaternary geology, and that was at Massey University, 2003-2012 in the Geography group. Got very bored with that, and then resigned and moved to Brisbane, where I worked for Moultrie Group for 2 years as an engineering geologist, and I got into business development a bit as well. And then I got picked up by Golder Associates, who are now part of USP, and I worked out of Brisbane there as an engineering geologist and engineering geophysicist, so borehole geophysics as well as surface, so wireline refraction, MSW, ERT, EM, GPL, all of that. And during all that time, I was doing a Master of Engineering in Mining at UNSW, part-time by distance learning. So I now have very much, real respect for people who are working full-time and studying, post-grad, because it's difficult, especially if you're in industry and you're working long days on sites and, physically, it's very demanding. And then I got appointed here, got bored with that, fancied coming back to academia, and my wife's from Auckland, so we moved back, and for this job at the uni, and it's been successful. I've introduced the Master of Engineering Geology degree in 2018, currently the only current one in Australasia. The PMEG at Canterbury is going to come back in 2026, which is great news. I've gained over $10 million in external funding as a PI over the last 8 years. I published 90 journal articles in total, and supervised 65 research students as the main supervisor to completion. I was head of earth science, and about my professional credentials as well. So that time in industry was a real turning point for me, and I think academics should try and do a bit of a sabbatical in industry, even if it's 3 months or something like that. For me, it was a massive career turning point, and I worked on underground mines in the Bowen Basin, open cast mines in Bowen and Hunter, and then some big transport projects: Sydney Metro, Sydney North Connects, Melbourne Metro tunnels, all these big ground investigations, Forestfield Airport link in Perth, and the Tyndall Air Base extension in Northern Territory. Worked for Abu Dhabi National Oil Company in UAE. And also big transport related, bread and butter issues, the Bruce Highway, for example, in Queensland. And then I also worked on some landfill capping projects. So this gave me a massive amount of, industry expertise to bring back into my teaching in Auckland, which I didn't have in my previous teaching career. Now, the state of play, this is preaching to the converted. You guys all know that geoscience enrolments in New Zealand are not brilliant. Here's the earth science ones. And, they've been tracking down. maybe who knows, maybe there's an inflection point, and with the new NCEA, Earth and Space Sciences, maybe things are going to improve. Let's hope so. But we all know that the university is under a lot of pressure, financial pressure, and when Gluckman brings out his universities report in February, that's going to be quite interesting. What happens after that? Certainly at Auckland, we're feeling the squeeze at the minute. But this is not unique to New Zealand. And in fact, in New Zealand, it's quite interesting because, just looking at ethnicity and gender, it tends to be European females. They're the biggest demographic doing earth science, and certainly that's reflected at Auckland. But yeah, mainly Europeans and mainly females. Now, the problem is, globally and here, mining, even for critical minerals, has got a really dreadful image problem. Geology is also blamed for climate change, and then for those reasons, particular enrolments have been in trouble globally. And this is from the Australian Geoscience Council. You see Italy, UK, Australia, Canadian, and US undergraduate completions there as well. So that's probably the last decade or so we've seen a decrease in that. And just to put some numbers on that, Australia 38% drop from 2013 to 2017, UK 24% drop from 2016 to 2019, US 29% drop from 2016 to 2020, and in fact there's going to be apparently 130,000 deficit of geoscientists in the US by 2029 because of that. And Canada a big drop, and this has a pernicious effect because we're not training enough numbers of people to deal with our everyday problems. And by that I mean, if you want to build a one-story house, you need a geologist because they're going to go to the site, the geologist, he or her, they're going to do a soil auger, a scalar penetrometer, and a shear vane, and write a little report. That's just for a one-story house. That's nothing to do with any big construction projects or rehabbing highways or transport corridors after earthquakes or rainfall events, or mining. Not even talking about mining here. So in New Zealand, it's a real problem in this country, just because the nature of where we are. And this has been globally. This has been a concern in the UK, and there's been various articles in magazines and trade journals, as well as Nature Geoscience, about these issues probably from about 2021 onwards, I'd say, looking at the literature. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. Mining is definitely not attractive to young talent. There's a very big anti-fossil careers movement globally and in New Zealand as well. And young people are a bit more values driven these days, or they think they're values driven. I would question whether they actually are. But they say they want to save the planet. They want to see a direct line between what they're studying and what fits their values. They see geology equals oil equals mining equals dirty, and they see geology as old-fashioned technology. And those two last bullets are important because, in New Zealand, geology doesn't equal oil mining or dirty. 90% of geoscientists in New Zealand do not work anywhere near the resource sector. They're doing all sorts of environmental management, hazards, engineering, geology work. And they're more and more using technology and moving towards space age technology, certainly SAR, INSAR, things like that, satellite sensors. So it is a problem, and it's a perception problem. In fact, it's a perception paradox, because this is from the American Geoscience Institute, and you can see even in the US, most geoscientists don't work in the resource sector. They're in lots of other industries, doing all sorts of things, environmental engineers, civil engineers, conservation work, environmental science. And in New Zealand, it's certainly at Auckland, it's geohazards, environmental management, and the civil engineering sector that employs geoscientists. Very, very few of ours work in the resource sector. Things are starting to change a little with the geopolitical issues. This article on the left there came out in May this year in Foreign Policy. Uncle Sam wants you to join the mining industry. So the Americans started getting worried about critical minerals. Former UK Prime Minister there, Rishi Sunak, that was March in the Times. He made some comments about critical minerals and education. And then finally, last week, University of Exeter relaunched their undergraduate mining engineering program at Camborne School of Mines. So things are starting to change. People are starting to get very concerned about critical minerals as well as energy security. And that's where geoscientists come in. Now, in the UK, they're ahead of the curve with us. They've been concerned about geoscience for a long time, enrolments. So their outreach initiative started, well over a decade ago, a couple of decades ago. You've got A-level entries in the plot there up to 2018, 2019. And they've had, STEM ambassadors for a long time. They've had Bridges to School for a long time in the UK, and all sorts of other quarrying association type outreach activities, where professionals will get paid to take a day off and go into schools and do things. And to be honest, I see a lot of this because I'm a chartership assessor for the Geological Society of London, and often in all the portfolio stuff, the candidate will tell us all about their outreach work that they've been doing, which is great. So there's quite a lot of outreach goes on in the UK, lots of different things. It's not that we don't do anything in New Zealand. We do outreach. We've got the Wonder Project, which unfortunately this government has taken the funding away from, but Engineering New Zealand is still supporting, and they're trying to find industry funding for it to keep it going. We've got Bridges to Schools here, which is from ICE in the UK, Institution of Civil Engineers, and we've got seismometers in schools and other things. So there is outreach going on here, which is great. We probably just need more of it. I would suggest. Second thing I'll talk about here now is about making connections and influencing. And this is really about sticking our necks out and taking one for the team. And over the last 18 months, I kind of got a bit sick of what I was reading in the newspapers and online about mining, all the rest of it, because that reflects on young people. So I published 12 articles in the Conversation newsroom over the last 18 months. About how important geoscience is to New Zealand. Most recently, I put a paper in Newsroom 2 weeks ago because some protesters attended the Careers Expo at Victoria University, and the AusIMM and Rio Tinto stands had to leave, and that was really a shame because I know, Lauren, who was managing the AusIMM stand. I mean, she took time out of her working week to be there. And I thought that was unfortunate that some activists removed the opportunity for students to hear about the real varied careers in mining. And I mean, mining employs, business people, economics, environmental scientists, engineers, geologists, geophysicists, a whole range of people are involved in the mining industry. I mean, I worked in it on and off for 4 years. And obviously when I published that 2 weeks ago, I got a massive amount of abuse over email, online, all the rest of it. But to be honest, I've got a very thick skin. It's water off a duck's back. I couldn't care less. And I certainly won't be taking the university to the employment tribunal or anything like that. For me, bring it on. I'm happy to debate anything about geoscience and how important it is to our everyday life, because from a soup spoon to crockery to all our medication to our spectacles, absolutely everything we use, unless it's made of wood, unless we're walking around in wooden clogs, comes out of the ground and it's refined somewhere. And for me, it's really important that we may, as geoscientists, we take upon ourselves to say this to people and have conversations with people about how important geoscience is. And this is just the resource side of geoscience. I would argue that in New Zealand, the hazards side of geoscience is probably as important. But anyway, it's important we keep these conversations going because if we want green technology, and we'll do, we want to leave fossil fuels in the past without a doubt. But wind turbines, for example, a 3.2 megawatt turbine has got 300 tons of steel, it's got 5 tons of copper, and it's got tons of aluminium in it. The wind turbines going up in South Taranaki are, I think, 4.2 megawatts. So that's even more metal. And that comes out of the ground. And obviously coking coal is used in steel production. So, these are difficult conversations to have, but it's really important that we articulate these as geoscientists to people as best we can. And, I'd encourage any one of my colleagues here to stick their neck out and write articles in the Conversation or Newsroom or do media work. and just explain how important geoscience is. I would argue that we need geoscientists more than ever. In New Zealand, we've got construction demand. If you want to build anything, you need a geologist. We've got greenfield and brownfield residential ground investigations. We've got massive infrastructure projects. We've also got a lot of geohazard and climate mitigation. And a lot of this is temporary works or reinstatement. It could be hazard mitigation and planning for the future. And it could be helping with engineering design solutions. And a lot of industry's been involved in that. This 2.2 here over the last year or so. And that's ignoring critical minerals, which obviously now, Shane Jones and other people are sort of, talking about. So, our geologists are busy enough. They don't necessarily need the resource sector, but if the resource sector does increase here a bit, then we're going to need even more geoscientists. And I've written about this anyway already. But so I'd argue we need geoscientists more than ever. Now, I'll just talk about a couple of things here. This is from Deakin University. Reasons for speaking out and sticking your neck out. Bad thing. Edmund Burke said 300 years ago, bad things happen when good people do nothing. And I think good people have been doing nothing for too long. And I've had some lovely messages over the last few weeks and months about some of these articles I've written, from various professors around New Zealand, which has been brilliant, of in engineering, in geology, geophysics, which is great. I really appreciate that. But I'd like other people to speak out too and have the courage to speak out as well. Negativity about geoscience is very corrosive. We are the ones who offer opportunities and solutions to dealing with wicked environmental problems. And above all, when you do speak out, it's actually quite liberating, I find it. You're getting things off your chest. And it can be great fun interacting with some people, but not others. And obviously, it's really important that you stay within the relevant codes of conduct, which for me are the University of Auckland Staff Code of Conduct, the Geological Society of London Code of Conduct, and the Engineering New Zealand Code of Conduct. I've been struck out yet, but let's see what happens. Some of you might be aware of Hayden Mort's really good outreach training. When I was head of Earth Science in 2020, I was running down a grant. I had some money left, so I actually paid for the university to have subscription to Hayden Mort's Geologize education, practical communication education, and it's a great training course that he runs. He runs different ones now, and he's a really interesting guy, Hayden. He's really a part-time neuroscientist, I would say. He knows how the brain works. I think he nursed his first wife through some, for quite a few years through quite a few brain neurological issues. So he became a bit of an amateur expert, actually. And Hayden is very big on empathy with people you're debating things with, and I think that's really important when we are trying to debate. We've got to understand not everybody will come halfway and want to talk to us. However, we can often find common ground with people who have opposing viewpoints. So it's about doing that first and building the relationship. And if you haven't taken any of Hayden's courses, I really recommend them. I'll just move on to work integrated learning. So this is another passion of mine, principally because I guess I spent 4 years in industry and then came back and set up a Master of Engineering Geology. But what is WIL? Well, first of all, it's quite big in the University of Auckland's 2020-2030 strategy. There's a lot of other things in that strategy, but one is WIL, and just a simple definition would be a wide range of educational activities incorporating academic learning and workplace practice. Students engage in authentic and meaningful work-related tasks and involve three stakeholders: the student, the education provider, and the workplace or community. Now, this doesn't just mean internships. This isn't just about a student doing an internship at a company. There's actually lots of other things which I'll get onto, but there's a lot of benefits to aspects of work integrated learning. It can broaden the student perspectives, give them confidence. It can increase their awareness of real world challenges. It can enhance their soft skills. And I would argue soft skills is a bit of a misnomer, because soft skills are crucially important. it can guide their future career aspirations, boost their employment prospects, and it's great for networking. Remember, in New Zealand, 2/3 of jobs are not advertised. It's word of mouth, or you just turn up at a workplace or drop someone an email and you get a job. So networking is so important in New Zealand. We're a small pond, and everyone's sort of once or twice removed from somebody else. Work Integrated New Zealand, I've got a website there, and you can join or you can go to their annual conferences. Some examples of work integrated learning, it could be an internship, or it could be applying an industrial standard or process to dealing with a problem. And in this photograph, we've got some students using a scalar penetrometer, which is a type of instrument to measure the penetration resistance of soil and calculate from that the California bearing ratio, important in civil engineering. Or it might be, a day visit to a work site. Now, obviously, there's challenges to that in New Zealand. With the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 now, we've got serious about workplace health and safety. You can't just turn up with a bunch of students anymore at a construction site or a mine. There's a lot of hoops you have to go through. So there are challenges. But this can be very valuable experiences. It could be simple as well, the WIL experience. It could be using the 2005 New Zealand Geotechnical Guidelines. This 2-page field sheet I'm showing you there is what every geotechnical engineer and engineering geologist in New Zealand will have laminated in their field box. So, going through this in the field or in a lab, applying it to rock core is a work integrated learning experience, because it's a work process you're introducing. You might take them to a site. This is on the left, that's the core shed at Rotowaro mine. And on the right there, that's I think that's Maramarua mine in the Waikato. So, these one-day trips can be very useful to work sites, but obviously, PPE and all sorts of other things and boxes have got to be ticked. But they can be really worthwhile for the students and great on their CV. To say that they've visited a mine, they've talked to technical services staff, they kind of know what it's all about, etc., etc. And yeah, Work Integrated New Zealand, I'll just give them a shout out. Really good. They do annual talks. Sorry, not annual, monthly talks, but there's an annual conference. I think the next one's in Hawke's Bay, April 2025. And a lot of the people involved in it are from the likes of Unitech and the Polytechs. So they're really at the coalface, if you like, if you pardon the pun, of students and workplace integration, and really interesting people to work with and understand, the Polytech people. So yeah, that's probably something that people might be worth interested in going to in Hawke's Bay in April. I just want to get on just about finally now, chartership in the Geosciences. This is really important. It's a really good selling point for the Geosciences, I've found. I don't have any data to back that up. That's anecdotal. When you can say to a student, look, at an open day, I attend the open days, I talk to parents and potential students. I talk to teachers when they come in as well. You can actually be chartered as a geologist, just like an accountant, you can become a chartered geologist. And oh, really? So, it's a good way of saying, look, there's a long-term career development. It's not just getting a degree. You can get chartered, you can work, get chartered, and, that can mean, movement up through the career grades at work, et cetera, et cetera. And in New Zealand, just above that dotted line, I guess for geologists, there's three main or geoscientists, there's three main ways of being chartered. The main one is the Geological Society of London, chartered geologist, chartered membership of Engineering New Zealand, professional engineering geologist, and then more recently, and the ANZGG have been pushing this, is the chartered environmental professional in geomorphology. So that there, I'll just take you through these. And below the line, you've got obviously other learned societies. AusIMM is really important, and if you work in the mineral sector, you'd probably want to be a competent person with the AusIMM at some point. And obviously, the New Zealand Geotechnical Society is the bread and butter geotechnical society that most of us are members in, who work in this sector. Just chartership of the Geolsoc of London. They also do chartered scientist, but it's the only body that can give chartered status out. And it is UK based, but there's a lot of people all over the world, mainly the former British colonies, New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, also UAE, who are chartered geologists. So a lot of the chartership assessments I do are for people based in Australia. I'm doing one in Hong Kong next week online. And, you know, this is for chartered geologist. You don't have to have an earth science or geology BSc. You might have a geography BSc, but you might have shown through your work over your, you know, a few years of your career that you've met the 7 chartership competencies, and each section is going to be signed off by your line manager. That's quite a big part of the application. Then there's a competency overview, 3,000 characters for each competency. Then you've got to provide 6 supporting documents and 3 years of continued professional development records and 2 referee statements. You then, if that ticks a lot of the boxes, you're then interviewed with 2 assessors, and you have to tick one box, at least one box, for your expertise. And I mean, you know, geomorphology. So say you've got a geography background and you work as a geomorphologist. Well, you could become a chartered geologist with the Geological of London, specializing in geomorphology. These are the boxes I ticked 3 when I applied. But you know, geomorphology would suit a lot of people. So you know, while there's the chartered environmental professional scheme with ANZGG, you know, the CGEOL is probably more globally recognized at present. I would argue. What it's all about, it's generally all about geological models, and that might be cross sections or you know, maps that you've produced, and you know, in interpretation, and you know, demonstrating applied context and communicating it as well. So that's what chartership's about with that. Chartership with Engineering New Zealand. So this is for professional engineering geologists, and it's designed to be equivalent to chartered professional engineer, but that's got separate status which exists under the Act. And it's an expert qualification. Ideally, you'll have 5 to 7 years experience. It's quite an onerous application, a bit like chartered geologist. I found them about similar complexity in terms of applying and the whole process, the interviews and everything. But it's useful in New Zealand. I won't go through all this, but there's a knowledge assessment which you have to undertake, which covers a lot of this stuff. Bread and butter, geomorphology, geology type things. And they also look for, you know, knowledge specific to New Zealand conditions, because obviously we're strung out from the subtropics to the subantarctic. So, you know, the weathering grades, you know, if you're working up in Northland, you've got very deep weathering profiles. If you're working down south, you know, the soils are very different. Obviously you get your little stamps and things like that. But, you know, and chartership with Engineering New Zealand is more about managing engineering work, I suppose. Professional acumen, ethics, things like that, and you know, developing solutions. Certified environmental practitioner. I'll just talk quickly about this. This emerged out of the Australian New Zealand Geomorphology Group. I believe Kirsty Frears and Ian Fuller were heavily involved in this, and a few others. And you know, it's for people with a relevant, you know, degree. Geography, environmental science, geology, and evidence. You've got to have 7 years experience, 2 referees, and a written statement, and 3 pieces of work evidence demonstrating the nature and scope of your experience, and 2 years of CPD. So that might suit some people as well. You know, and again, it could be a selling point to your geography undergraduates. Why don't you work towards a chartered environmental practitioner? Remember, you know, even as a student, you can start logging CPD as well. These are, you know, some of the, I pulled this off the ANZGG website. Cecilian Conn, who's a field geomorphologist at Tongan and Taylor, and you know, Ian Fuller, probably he knows, and Kirsty Frears. It seems to tend to attract fluvial geomorphologists, but you know, it could be something that people might want to consider. I'll just make some concluding remarks over the next 3 or 4 minutes. I think we all need to champion the geosciences in our conversations with people. And in the UK, as I said, that they're a bit ahead of the curve in dealing with these enrolment issues, or having to deal with them. In May this year, they launched the UK Geoscience Strategic Alliance, And that is an alliance between University of Geoscience UK, the Geological Society of London, and the British Geological Survey. And they're working through their terms of reference at the moment and their board and all the rest of it. But their aim is to reverse the downward enrolment trends by promoting the positive role that geoscience plays in the UK economy and society. And it's very much led at the minute by Nick Core, who's adjunct at the University of Portsmouth. He's very experienced, worked in Hong Kong for a lot of his career as well. And I would argue that we need to set something similar up here in New Zealand. And that could be, let's call it the New Zealand Geoscience Strategic Alliance. Let's be original. And that would be between the Geoscience Society of New Zealand, New Zealand Geotechnical Society, Engineering New Zealand, the Natural Hazards Commission, what's left of the CRIs after Sir Peter Gluckman runs through them, and maybe NZTA as well, and possibly other organisations. And I think that hopefully we'll have some discussions in Dunedin at the conference in November. Maybe we have a little sit down and see what we can do regarding this, because I know there's quite a lot of people from industry are going to attend in November. So it could be a really good opportunity to start the ball rolling and then really kick on with it maybe in 2025. The other problem here, I think what we need to do is probably restructure our degrees away from our majors, which are really minors. We have these skinny majors here. And in fact, the Auckland Earth Science major, you can study a BSc for 3 years and, only a third of it might be Earth Science papers, and you end up as a major in Earth Science. And, it's obviously the business model of the universities. They want to keep students at uni as long as possible, get them doing postgrad, get 5 years of fees out of them. And that's a great business model for the universities, but it's doing a disservice to the country. It's saddling young people with more debt than they really need, and it's entrenching existing inequities in society from my standpoint. So, little Johnny or little Sione or little Rangi from South Auckland, instead of staying at university for 3 years and coming out with, quite a fat major and, with a lot of geological expertise, he's got to stay on and do postgrad for a couple of years to learn the basics. And I don't think that's very good. And the second point there, obviously, is that, they're saddled with more debt, and they're probably more likely to cross the Tasman straight away and try and earn big money in mining and pay it off very quickly. And the third thing is it's a handbrake on the economy. If someone's studying, they're not earning money and circulating it back into the economy. So I think we really, and I hope Peter Gluckman, I don't know if he'll do this, but I hope we have a rethink completely of our undergraduate degrees. I'd like to see us doing degrees in a subject rather than majors. And remember, our majors are really minors. They're that skinny. But that's going to upset the business model of universities. Just highlight an event tomorrow night. So I'm on the New Zealand Geotechnical Society Geoeducation working group, and this kicked off in Cairns last year. It's jointly with the Australians, and we've been going around New Zealand doing talks. Our next one's Auckland tomorrow night. We've done Wellington, we did Christchurch last month, University of Canterbury, which is a great turnout. So if you're in Auckland, please come along tomorrow night. You don't need to register, you can just rock up, and that's in 303 GO2. You'll see a load of pizzas lined up outside from 5:30 onwards. And it's me and Leah Wotherspoon from engineering, and also some people from industry, Christoph Kraus from Becker and Eleni Glecki from Stantec, and some other people. Engineering New Zealand have a rep there too. And we're just talking about these issues that actually engineering shares, because STEM issues at high schools, secondary schools mean that we, even at Auckland, we've got less people doing the Bachelor of Engineering, which that's a real problem. So engineering and geoscience, we share similar problems, so we're trying to work together to deal with it. Just finally, some of you might be interested in this at Geon. It's on the Geological Society of London website, Geoscience Education Outreach Network. You might be aware of it. It's a new online network platform where you can exchange ideas and things like that, and some of you might be interested in joining that. So feel free to jump on that and look into it. Just finally, I should acknowledge Vicky Moon, Eleanor Williams, and Mike Petterson for providing me with some of the information on some of the slides I've given you. And thank you for listening.